Hi. Today we're going to move on to our second day of our Unit 3. We're going to talk about point slope form and writing linear equations. So what you see in front of you, this equation right here, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, is called point slope. So let's add that in to these two blanks. And so it's called point slope because it contains a point, an ordered pair, xy, and it contains the slope. So the slope is pretty straightforward. There's your slope right there. So I'm going to write slope on this line right here and just point to it. So your point, notice you have a y and a y1 and an x and an x1. So linear equations, in order to graph them, must have an x and a y. So the x and the y is consistent throughout your equation. But the ones with the subscripts, the y1 and x1, those are considered your points. So x1, and notice it goes into the end of the equation. So it says x minus x1. So if x1 was 5, this would say x minus 5. If x1 was negative 5, then this would say x minus negative 5, which would ultimately become positive 5. So same thing on y1. Of course, y1 is up front with the y value. Okay, so that can be the tricky part about point slope, is the formula has a negative or a minus in it. So whatever we plug in for y1 or x1, if that number we substitute in is also negative, well then you have two negatives, and two negatives will become a positive. Okay, so number one, let's graph the equation right here, and then, well, in order to graph it, we need to identify the point and the slope. Okay, so I'm gonna, above this, write the formula. So it's y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay, and so because I see the minus in here, oops, I forgot my 1 right here, y minus y1. So what I want to point out is I'm just gonna circle y1 and 5. So the negative needs to be a part of the formula. So y1 is going to be a positive 5. x1, kind of the same idea. x1 has to be a positive 2. So our point here is going to be 2, 5. Okay, and then your slope is a 1/2. So sometimes people like to think of it, well, are you telling me it's the opposite of what's in the equation? And you could look at it that way. Like this says x minus 2, but your point is actually positive 2. This says y minus 5, but your point is actually positive 5. So I mean, you can look at it that way, but the reason it's the opposite is because the formula is minus. So when we go to graph that, we're just going to graph those two things. So plot the ordered pair of 2, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then let's count our slope. Okay, so we have our rise over run. So I'm going to go up 1 and over 2. And I would go do it several times. If you want to, you could also go back to your original point and go the opposite way, down 1 and over 2. Okay, so then we want to make our line. So there is the graph of that equation. All right, so we just need a point, we just need a slope, and then we can go from there. All right, I want you to pause the video, and I want you to do this extra example here. I want you to write down your point and your slope. You might, before you graph it, you might resume the video and make sure your point and slope is right, and then you can pause it again and check the graph. Okay, in our point here, our x1, so see how it says plus 2. So that means it used to say x minus negative 2. That's how that became positive. So our point is going to be a negative 2, and then the y is going to be the positive 5. Okay, your slope is negative 2/3. Okay, and then we want to graph. So negative 2, 5. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I have a negative slope. So I'm not going to count up and to the right. I'm going to count down and to the right. So down 2 and then to the right 3. 1, 2, 3. down 2, 1, 2, 3. And as long as you have 3 points, you can make your line. I would go with 3, not 2. All right, so put your arrowheads on the end, and that would be your line. All right, so that is graphing with point slope form. Okay, so let's move on. We're going to write an equation at the bottom here. Okay, number 2, write the equation of the line in point slope form that has a slope of -3 that passes through the point -1, 7. So point slope form, I want you to write down the formula. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay, and so my slope, of course, there's my m that I'll substitute in. And so I've got my x1, y1 as your -1 and 7. So now let's plug in. So y minus y1 is 7 equals m times x minus, and then our x1 is -1. Okay, so notice I wrote minus -1 because our x1 is negative. Now I'm going to go through and turn this into x plus 1 because these minus and negative is really plus. So y minus 7, oh, I didn't plug in my m. My m is -3, and then x plus 1. Okay, so that is your equation in point slope form. All right, so you just want to watch those negatives as you plug in. Okay, let's go on to the next page. All right. Okay, at the top here, I want you to go ahead and do this one. So it's just like the one we just did. I want you to pause, write the equation of the line in point slope form for what you're given in that example. We've got x1 and we've got y1. So we're going to have y minus, and my y1 is -8, equals 2/5 times x minus the 10. And then you want to eliminate the double negatives. So you're going to have y plus 8 equals 2/5 times x minus 10. And that would be your example. Or I'm sorry, your equation. Okay, if it helps you also, the color might help to see that there's a negative, a minus in the equation and a negative. You might do something like that. Okay, moving on. This extra example, let's write the equation of a line in point slope form through the points -1, 4, and 2, 3. Okay, so step 1, I need point slope form, write down the formula. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay, so I need two things. I need a slope and I need a point. Well, I've got 2 points. Doesn't matter which one I plug in because if you think about those 2 points are going to make a line, as long as the points are on the line, it's going to work in the equation. So we actually could have 2 answers here be correct. But slope, how am I going to get my slope? Well, you know a formula that calculates slope between 2 points. Okay, so let's do that over to the side here. So my formula for slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we need to do a little side calculation just to get m, and then it doesn't matter which point I plug in here. So my y2 minus y1, so I'm going to take the 3 minus 4. 3 minus 4, and then your x's. 2 minus -1, 2 minus -1. Well, 2 minus -1, I'm going to come through here and make them both say plus now. So my slope, it looks like 3 minus 4 is -1. 2 plus 1 is 3. All right, so there is your slope. And then I could have 2 potential answers. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and write both down. You only really need one. So let's say we plug in -1, 4. So here's what I would have. I would have y minus, my y1 is 4, equals my m, which is the negative 1/3, and then times x minus, and then your x1 is negative 1. Okay, and then we need to simplify here those double negatives. So y minus 4 equals negative 1/3 times x plus 1. Okay, that is one correct acceptable answer. But I could have a different answer and it would still be the same line. So let's say you want to pick 2, 3. All right, so I would have y minus y1, which is now the 3, equals your m, which is still negative 1/3, and then times x minus your x1 is a 2. So there's no double negatives or anything, so actually I can go ahead and circle that and I'm done. So that is your equation. So sometimes you will have two different answers, which is fine. Okay, so either one would be acceptable. All right, we just have one more example. I'd like you to do this one on your own. You are given a graph, and I want you to write the equation of the line in point-slope form. Okay, so I want you to pause, and then when you have an answer, go ahead and restart the video and check your work. Okay, so I would just, of course I need m in my points. I would count rise over run if were doing this. So I would say my slope is going to be, so it's positive, so it's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So up 8 and then over 1, 2, 3. Okay, so it looks like I have an 8/3 as my slope. Now again, I could have two answers, so I could use either point. So let's say I'm choosing -1, -5 as my x1 and y1. So I would have y minus the y1 is -5 equals your slope, which we said was 8/3, and then times x minus, and your x1 is -1. So several double negatives. So that would simplify to y plus 5 equals 8/3 times x plus 1. Okay, so this is the first answer that will work. Okay, if you chose 2, 3, I would have y minus 3 equals your m, which is still 8/3, and then times x minus 2. So I don't seem to have any double negatives, so that would be my answer too. Okay, of course you don't need both of those, but one would be fine. Okay, that wraps up point slope form. So if you have two possible answers on homework and you're using Schoology, either answer would be fine. All right, if you have any questions, just let me know.